Welcome to the Configure Price Quote podcast. My name is Frank Sohn and I'm the founder of Novus CPQ Consulting. This podcast is 100% focused on Configure Price Quote, also known as CPQ, and will provide you useful insights into this topic. My guest today is Kevin Bennett. He is a co-founder and chief technology officer at KBMax. And KBMax is a company that was founded in 2009 and has offices in the US, Italy, and Germany. Kevin lives in Portland, Oregon, and the KBMax headquarters are in Austin, Texas. Kevin has helped to develop partnerships with Oracle and Salesforce, and we're excited to have him here. Welcome, Kevin, to the program.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Kevin, let me start with a question that I saw also on LinkedIn. It shows that you have a patent for a fluid delivery system, so that tells me you're an innovator. How did you end up in the CPQ area?
Right. Actually, it's all kind of woven together, so that's a pretty good question. So I started at Santa Clara University with a physics degree, and I went into research and development in the semiconductor industry. And I was there working on designs, equipment for the semiconductor industry. And after a couple of years, I ended up leaving that company and started working on my own designs because I felt that there were ways to do it better. And so, I went out and got a patent, a hardware patent. And very much this was kind of my introduction to CPQ as well, because I realized my design was kind of these Lego blocks that kind of snap together, these stainless steel blocks that could be used in the semiconductor equipment. And it really kind of cut down the size and the weight and the price, and you could build any design with this system of blocks. And it made it very amenable to automation through software. And that was, I had taken some programming classes in college, but I essentially taught myself how to program. And the goal was to build a configurator for this platform that I developed. And this was just a couple years out of school. So I developed a configurator for it. I got that hardware design licensed out to a company that still to this day is manufacturing those blocks and actually doing quite well with it. But the software was very much complementary to it. And once I realized that this was possible, right? The automation, the configurator at that time was automating the SolidWorks files, the engineering files. It was doing the pricing. It was spitting out a bill of materials. Once I realized that was possible, it kind of started, after a few years, kind of started thinking, well, why can't we do this for other semiconductor equipment? And then shortly after that, the idea was, why can't we do this for any configurable manufactured product, right? And that was the genesis of what became KBMax, was that thought process, and that's how it kind of led into it.
No, I think one interesting thing that you just mentioned, right, when it snaps together like a puzzle, is also the Snap rule language that you use. And I was also wondering, I like it. So, but right. What got you started using that as the rule maintenance language?
Right. So what Frank's referring to the listeners. The rule language in KBMax, it's called KBMax Snap. It's very much a visual experience to write your rules. And the genesis for that is kind of interesting too. So there's a game that a lot of the people listening with kids might know this game. You can get it on your tablets, and it's called MIT Scratch, right? And so this is a program developed by MIT. And it's a game for kids that essentially introduces them to the concepts of programming. And you essentially, there's a cat named Scratch, and you have these blocks that you can put together in different ways that kind of tell commands to the cat, and you animate this cat around. And so, we saw this. I actually met some of the people that were working on that in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. And that's really where the idea for Snap came from, was seeing that. And it comes with a lot of advantages, right? My favorite thing about Snap is that it's very easy to learn for beginners. When you put them in front of Snap, they just start doing things, right? People have never programmed in their lives just start building things with it. There was actually a news story a couple of years ago where the first line of code written by a U.S. president was Barack Obama, writing something like a Snap type language. so it's kind of interesting there. But it's really what people don't realize on the other end is that once you're an experienced user, if you do have a programming background, as you get better at the tool, it is a Turing complete language, meaning you can actually develop any algorithm that's possible with KBMax Snap. And we've really expanded it. It can do queries, it can query databases, it can make web service calls. You can develop functions with it that can be called from anywhere in the KBMax system. So it's a very powerful system. And it's definitely, if we're going to talk today about differentiators, that's definitely one of them that you got to consider with KBMax.
Then let me ask you this before we get too deep into the KBMax part. What gets you personally excited about the CPQ space right now?
well, there's a lot of it, and I think a lot of the excitement, and this is my passion towards it, is I kind of came up in these manufacturing companies, and the problem that they're experiencing is very well known to me. I feel that problem very deeply, and everything that we do are just enhancements to solve that problem. And I think as we're going a lot further here, there's some very exciting things happening in CPQ right now, and KBMax is at the forefront of a lot of them, I think. And among those would be the 3D visualization that we're doing, like we talked about, KBMax Snap. The rules are getting easier and easier to write. And there's some future things that are exciting too, but probably leave those for a different part of the conversation.
Yep. Also, let me ask a little bit more on the future trends, since we already started talking about it, right? So I heard different people talk about different things. What I have written down on my notes is basically more personalized UI, user experience, right? I know that some researchers work on this too, because customers get away from the standard, want to have more personal experience. You have the price optimization, obviously, that's worked on the Internet of Things, chatbot. And in general, I guess the speed of development will be important in the future. You see anything else in addition to what I mentioned?
Absolutely. So the one that's, we'll call it the future, but I think it's here now in KBMax. But you mentioned user experience, and this is something that we've put a lot of focus into the last 2 years, and it's really starting to pay off. And that's really this idea of essentially converging what's happening in CPQ with what's happening in e-commerce, right? And a lot of times CPQ is kind of this internal tool, right, that you use with your sales teams use it. Your dealers and distributors might use it. But very rarely, historically, have those been opened up to the customer and put on the public website of that company. And that's a use case that we're seeing popping up more and more. And we put a lot of work into developing the user experience of KBMax to attack that market. So with KBMax, you have a very slick user experience. It's all kind of built in, so you don't have to design your UI for 20 different device sizes and browsers and operating systems, which can be quite difficult these days. All that user experience is built in. We have a whole embed API that allows you to easily hook it up into your website. And then you still get all the benefits of your normal CPQ, right? So when you have customers using it directly, you're essentially creating somewhat of a marketing and a sales tool. You're creating a whole new sales channel by putting that on your public website, and it can be very transformative to those companies. And when the user's done, right, it goes and creates a lead in your CRM system. All the information that the user selected is waiting right there in KBMax, and that can be exploited through our different integrations with those CRM systems. So very much you can start attacking these leads the same way as if a salesman had done it in normal CPQ use case, but it was actually the customer that did it. And this is, it's a very powerful use case, and I think the future of that is really now with KBMax.
Would absolutely agree. This omni-channel experience, or selling via your sales team, your channel partners, and your e-commerce website, and having the maintenance just once for all these channels, I think is key.
Right.
Also from a maintenance point of view.
Yeah, and that's where the user experience comes in, really, because a lot of normal CPQ configurators are really not appropriate to put on a website, right? You've seen a lot of them. They're very powerful tools, but not something where the user experience is all that great. So that's why we put a lot of work into that side of it, and especially with the 3D visuals that go along with it. It's something very exciting to put on your website. It's very differentiating for you as a customer of KBMax to be able to put that on your website. In kind of the rest of the future, right, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence. I think that's a very exciting field. There's a lot of applicable use cases for it for CPQ. One that's also very exciting for us is augmented reality. So you can already do, with our 3D visualization, you can already do virtual reality. We see virtual reality as kind of a limited use case in the sense that it might be cool to have if you're showing at a conference, right? And you want to wow some people that are coming to your booth. But the necessity to have all the gear and the goggles and everything, it's just not something a lot of people are going to be carrying around with them, and not necessarily appropriate for putting on your public website. AR, however, is quite a different story as the devices become compatible and the technology develops a little bit. And I think very much we'll be at the forefront of that. We're already doing a lot of AR. It's just going to take a long time for the technology on the device side to really get out to the masses. But that's an exciting area too.
Yep. And we have some more information on this with the visual and virtual report where you participated as well. And I think for everyone who's looking into this and is not really sure, is that for me, what kind of visualization would be most beneficial, it's worth to have a look at this. When you do all these changes, also what you mentioned earlier with the user experience, are you looking to any outside thought leaders to help you with that, or it's mostly driven by customers? Who is really shaping this future with you?
Well, it's a lot of testing, to be honest with you. User experience, it's very much kind of in the marketing realm almost, and you end up having to do a lot of user testing. So you get your target users together and you try different UIs on them and see where they get stuck. And so we're kind of building up, our UI is a very flexible thing. However, we are building up best practices that we share with all our customers, so that if they want to use kind of a well-trodden path towards having a good user experience that is going to engage your users on your website, then we can tell our customers how to do that, right?
And based on this user experience, where do you do the testing? Is that mostly in the US or Europe, or are you also doing testing in Asia Pacific?
Well, we end up doing a lot of it in concert with our customers. So a lot of the stuff we work on is very proprietary. So it's hard to test some of those specific experiences unless you're doing it with that customer. But a lot of our customers we've helped kind of build up user testing labs and kind of a procedure to go through to get that feedback.
Yeah. And when you look for you personally, aside from the user experience, are there any leaders that you're looking to? I have an idea that could be someone like Gartner, Forrester, IDC, whatever firms or individuals these are. Is there anyone that's standing out from your point of view that's interesting for prospect or customer to know about?
Well, so it's more of a person that was kind of very transformative for me anyways, is Kathy Sierra. And she's given several talks and written some papers about generally about user experience, right? And her thought process is mostly, a lot of her talks are how to build a badass user, right? And by badass user, what she means is essentially how do you make your users really good at what they do, right? So it's not about your platform, it's not about your features and how fancy they are. It's how much better you're making that user at their job, right? And that's really how I tend to look at user experience.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, it's that's the most important thing. Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned a little bit earlier, because when I think of KBMax, I first think about visualization, but it's not just visualization, right? So I
absolutely not
to explain a little bit more what's behind your offering.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a common misconception because, one of the flashiest things about KBMax is that 3D visualization, and we're definitely out there pushing it very hard. But, we have to do some some re-education of the market, because there's a lot more to KBMax than the 3D visualization. It's always been a full CPQ tool. And in fact, our target and our customers have always been manufacturers, and our sweet spot there has always, to go a step further, is even complex manufacturers. So when you look at the Snap rule language, you look at our CAD automation, right? So we can automate SolidWorks, PTC Creo, and Autodesk, and Bennett. All these CAD systems we can actually automate the drawings of. Our pricing engine is very flexible because it has to be to be useful to these manufacturing companies. They all do pricing different ways. Our quoting tool, we do outputs for proposals, documents, spreadsheets, charting. We have a workflow engine that allows you to do approvals and build different files at different times. We have a whole integration platform for integrating to your CRMs, like Oracle CPQ and Salesforce CPQ, and your ERP systems as well. So there's a lot there, right, in KBMax, and it's very targeted towards manufacturing companies, like I said.
And what should these customers actually know concerning the maintenance? Because when they have complex machineries, they need to set up product models. And then the question is, what people do you need? What skills do they need to have? If you could explain a little bit more on this one for potential customers, that would be great.
Right. And so that was one of the big reasons we spent a couple of years developing KBMax Snap, was to make this maintenance more approachable. It includes a wider swath of skill sets that can use the tool because of KBMax Snap. And we do our best. It's kind of a tiptoe act where you're trying to make things easy enough and keep people on the path enough while staying flexible enough to solve the more complex problems. And I think with Snap and our admin tool, we tend to throw it right out there, right? If you go on our website, you'll see a bunch of content about our admin tool and KBMax Snap. And there's a reason for that. We're very proud of it. It's something that we show on the first demo with any prospective customer. It's not this dirty little secret that we're hiding, right? It's thrown right out there for the customers to see, because we feel that's one of the strongest points of our platform.
Yeah. And when you think about leading CPQ companies, right? So especially now, then let's talk about complex manufacturers. What do you think customers should expect from a leading CPQ company?
Well, I mean, they should expect a lot of the feature set that I explained there, but more so than features too. You've got to talk about services, because I think without a good service team that's close to the product, it can be difficult in the CPQ world. It is still very complex system to set up. And you need good services to kind of guide you down the path, right? So what mistakes other companies have made and how to avoid them as you're going through this. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen, as far as, if you look at we've had very few failures, but generally the failures have nothing to do with technology, at least on the KBMax projects. They've always just been kind of a commitment level from the customer, right? Were they committed to making this work? Were they putting the right resources behind it on their side? And so we've done a lot of work on our services team and taken all those things that we've learned and applied them to kind of a whole implementation process, right? A whole strategy from start to finish of how to get the customer there. And that can include as much of our time as the customer needs, right? Some need more than others. Some just want to get trained and get started on their own. But no matter which way you go, you just really got to get started on the right foot. And a good services team is the biggest key to success that I've seen.
Absolutely agree on this one. The change management to make sure users afterwards actually use the solution that you
right. We've seen all sorts of mistakes, like letting the scope creep is a big one, and also just kind of general project management, like you said, right? If you're developing something for your users, get those target users involved in the project early on. You have to do that. Otherwise, we have this whole kind of adoption process that we've defined, where if you follow this process, you'll do very well and your users will adopt the software. But if you ignore some of those things and don't get those users involved, they're going to reject it when you just throw it out to them, 9 months later, and they don't know anything about it, right?
For a prospective customer who is trying to learn a little bit more about it, what should they expect effort-wise concerning this change management based on your experience, right? So how many people do need to get involved? How much time do they need to spend? Any lessons learned that we can generalize and give us a recommendation, or is that too high level what I just said?
It's kind of hard because there's a whole spectrum of different things you might see, but I think in general, again, I think the most important thing is getting the core team at that company, and the core team should involve those that are sponsoring the project, those that are going to be running the project on their side. And like I said, users from the different departments that are going to be affected by this project, right? Yep. And I think as long as those people are involved, and then from there you kind of see a whole spectrum of how much services they're using versus doing it in-house. But I think in general, that's the most important thing.
Now I want to ask a question about the CPQ leadership. So there's a lot of talk about who's a leader, who's not the leader. You can look at different reviews from different firms. What I would like to ask you is basically what makes a leader from your point of view. What behaviors do you expect to see? How would you rate a leading company?
Right. Well, it's a tricky one because I think it's a marriage of a lot of things, right? I mean, one of the most important things in enterprise software is just how big of a sales team does that CPQ company have, right? Mm-hmm. How many different areas can they get to, and so forth. Because I think I still feel like CPQ it's definitely on its way up. It's growing, but in our experience, there's still a lot of companies out there that not only aren't using it, but really don't even know that it exists yet, which is a good thing for the CPQ industry. But so I think I would expect that. I would expect world-class service, like I said, and then you've really got to look for the technology that suits you, right? So one thing I've noticed is that all these companies are really kind of getting bunched together saying this is CPQ, when in reality, if you're a manufacturing company and you use some of the CPQs out there, it's not going to go very well because it wasn't built for that, right? Mm-hmm. It might have been built for telecom or might have been built for high tech and not manufacturing. And the same goes the other way around, right? There's ones like KBMax, and we're very, very much honest about that fact. If you're doing manufacturing, you should be talking to KBMax, right? If you're not doing manufacturing, it's probably not the best fit.
Is there any next game changer that you see coming up in CPQ in the next 12 to 18 months?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I was talking about the use case of putting these configurators on these company websites for the public to use. Because I think it's so transformative. We're working with several large manufacturing companies, brand names you heard of like Caterpillar, Tough Shed, for example, that are going to be putting these on their website, and that's coming. And I think as those start to get deployed and they're successful, I think it's just going to start a wave of new opportunities in CPQ. And it's really going to be focused, like we talked about, on user experience. And it's going to be focused on, this kind of new sales channel that you're creating by putting it on your website. It's hugely transformative, and it's not very far from where CPQ is at, right? It just needs a better user experience and some good technology to be able to integrate it with all these different websites.
I'm pretty sure that's something that will be interesting for a lot of prospective customers to see an example live, right? So that always pictures usually speak louder than words, right? So
right.
That I think is very good. So where is a chance for prospects and customers to see you face to face or to get in contact with you if they have any more questions? Anything you can share now or?
Right. The best is obviously our website at kbmax.com. You'll see us on the Salesforce App Exchange, on the Oracle Marketplace. We're at the shows for those two partners as well. So the Oracle CX show and the Salesforce Dreamforce show. We have listings on Capterra, G2 Crowd. You can go read reviews about KBMax. And obviously the best one, which is Novus, right, Frank? You can find a lot of good information about all the CPQ providers, including KBMax there. And like you were talking earlier, there was a good report about visualization technology that KBMax took part in recently there.
Okay. Thank you very much for this, Kevin. We will have the links to the events where you will show up next also in the description of the notes. Want to thank you very much for doing that. It was very exciting. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Frank. Have a good one.
If you want to learn more about KBMax, then you can also check our CPQ Provider Series fact sheets in our visual and virtual research report. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you learned something interesting today. If you like the podcast, please go ahead and rate it on iTunes or share it with your friends and colleagues. In the meantime, you can find us online at www.novuscpq.com. So long, everyone.